Good evening, everyone. Chris McDonald on the special Mac Files broadcast Thursday night, June the 14th on 2018. We're so glad to have our buddy Christopher Hall up in Washington come in today. We asked him on a quick notice. He's the Executive Vice President for the Center for Security Policy. And on this big day, Flag Day, Donald Trump's birthday, and the IG report, Chris, not all in that order, is the big news today. It's so good to have you, my friend. How's things up north?
Things are going okay up here, and we have lots of love for you Rebs back down there.
Absolutely, buddy. Chris is a patriot beyond words, and we always enjoy his opinion and value his input on this. And I thought I could not have asked anybody better to come in and talk about this IG report tonight. Chris, as we were talking before we came on the air, there was some concerns a few weeks ago that this report was going to be a little watered down. I don't think it could have been redacted. I don't think it was redacted, but I think, some of the language was, it's typical political Washington stuff. But what you've heard so far, and I know we're sort of hours still into this, and I think more and more is going to trickle out. It's a 400-page document. But what is your initial impressions of what you've heard so far in the IG report tonight, and who's in trouble and who's not?
My initial impression is that the truth is starting to come out. And the truth is that there was a deliberate effort by the Federal Bureau of Investigation to swing the race. It was explicit. So we have learned today that Peter Strzok, the deputy head of counterintelligence for the Federal Bureau of Investigation in the United States of America, said President Trump will not be president. We will stop it. Words to that effect, right? We will stop it. So that ain't okay. That ain't okay. So we basically have what is. It'll never be prosecuted this way, but this is treason.
Absolutely, Chris. Absolutely, I agree.
And so that's my impression. And I think that there are some people in real trouble. Some additional people probably in real trouble. I don't know why you and I and your viewers continue to pay the salary of Peter Strzok at the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I don't know why we continue to pay the salary of Lisa Page at FBI. These are people who they betrayed the trust of the American. They were operating as partisans within the system, and they should be gone yesterday. This hopefully will add more fire. But this is the beginning. This is not the end. This is the beginning, and what I understand from my sources is that this was not directed out of the FBI. This was directed out of the intelligence agencies. So we're going to find out a lot more about Clapper and Brennan. Former everythings, right? They've had every national security job under the planet under the Obama administration, Clintons, et cetera. So I don't know that. That's what I have heard and believe. And so if, what this appears when you look at it is that the intelligence agencies, including but not limited to the FBI's intelligence operation, were using tradecraft. They were using what they had learned about how to swing elections and manipulate the public and manipulate the systems of justice in other countries in order to advance American interests, and they used it against American citizens, and frankly, a candidate for the president of the United States. This is that's worse than Watergate. Watergate was a break-in. And this was not just using burglary as a crime. This was using spying, actual political operations that you can only use overseas. You are only legally allowed to use overseas, and I think people are going to go to prison over this.
I do too, Chris. And one thing that struck me today a little bit, the fact that the way that I'll deal with Strzok and Page in a minute, but I want to go to Comey, because Comey seems to have, at least for the moment, escaped a lot. I mean, I've listened to the media, and it depends on what channel you turn to, whether he was being bashed or whether he got off the hook. It's amazing liberals claim that that this cleared him today because they didn't say that he had any political bias, but yet the right-wing media is a little bit less sympathetic to that. But it did strike me as I began to think back about all this whole mess that started back in December 2016, the press conference that he had, the first one, where he basically outlined everything that Hillary Clinton had done. And I mean, he was basically saying she broke the law. And I even remember having the phone in my ear to my brother at the time. I said, man, I can't believe this. They are actually going to indict Hillary Clinton. And I did. I was on the phone when he was saying this. I said, I can't believe it. You're listening to Comey right now. And then he gets to the end and he says, but we don't find any criminal wrongdoing, that we don't find enough to bring criminal charges. And Chris, for the life of me, I'll never understood why James Comey would then turn around in October and come back and announce that they were reopening the Hillary Clinton investigation. That is the strangest series of events I've ever seen. And just from your perspective as a security person, what was your take on that? And how did you reconcile with what the IG report said about him today having no political bias?
Well, I don't remember anywhere in the law where it says that you are allowed to exonerate people who are in fact guilty or refuse to prosecute people who in fact are worthy of prosecution because as long as you have no political bias. I don't remember that in the law. So what this IG report said was that they illegally exonerated Hillary Clinton, and he was responsible for that. So whether he has any political bias or not, that's CNN spin. By the way, I tend to agree with it. I tend to think that he's much more motivated. James Comey is much more motivated by what's good for James Comey than he is by any partisanship. He's not a partisan. He is a primping peacock, right? That's who Jim Comey is. Jim Comey is about preening. He is about, puffing himself up. So, and pretending that he's the most moral person and that everybody else is slime. And that goes for Hillary Clinton as well as for Donald Trump. Let's be clear. I mean, he bashed Hillary and he bashed Donald, and everybody's awful, and he is the person who gets to sit in judgment over them. Well, she was, there was clearly enough evidence in my judgment. I mean, it appears that let's say it this way. According to the Inspector General, this was outside of standard operating procedure for the FBI, right? The Inspector General is a Democrat. He's a career civil servant. He is the Inspector General of the Department of Justice of the United States. And he says that what Comey did was outside of standard operating procedure in order to allow her off the hook. Right. So, what I say is irrelevant here. That's what he says. And the fact that he didn't have any political motivation for doing it is, at least according to the IG, I defer to the IG on that. I believe that's true. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. What he did was certainly unethical, definitely a breach of FBI procedure,
right,
and potentially criminal. Now, I don't know who. Actually have to have somebody who will indict, right? You actually have to have some for that to take place, and then therefore you have to have actual people at the FBI refer something to for criminal prosecution to the DOJ, or you have to have the IG refer it to criminal prosecution, which he has done with James Comey. Whether the Trump appointed DC-based prosecutor is going to actually bring charges against McCabe is another question.
Right.
I don't know what that is.
That would be
four things.
Right.
I don't know. There will be more that will be referred for criminal prosecution, but I do know that what took place here, it deserves to send people to prison. And if we had a functioning law enforcement system, which we do not, our federal law enforcement system has been corrupted over time. And we now have, we are teetering on the edge of a partisan, one party controlled U.S. federal government. The new data just came out. I'll tell you this. New data just came out that shows that the contributions by federal employees across the board in agencies across the board were 90 to 95, 99, 99.5, 99.7% to Hillary Clinton. I've seen old data that suggested that it was high. This is higher than even I, as a political scientist who've analyzed the data, knew. So these bureaucracies are intensely partisan, intensely leftist. And that is the opposite of the reason why the so-called progressives who wanted to progress towards scientific socialism, by their own words, right? That's 100 years ago, they put this system in place supposedly in order to avoid partisanship. Well, they failed, right? It is a partisan bureaucracy. It's 2 million people controlled by 4,000 partisans. It isn't controlled, and it's not under the operating control of the duly elected president of the United States. It is not acting in the interest of the duly elected president of the United States, and Americans should be horrified and terrified, because it is only a step from this to outright prosecutions, which is we're on the verge of it.
I know.
We're on the verge of it.
And Chris, that's what I've taken away from this. Even with the IG report, as strongly worded as it is, I think that it's still a sense out here in the public. May not be true, but there's a sense in this public. Again, today, we got two sets of laws. We got a set of justice system for the Clintons and the Dems, and we got a set of justice for people like me and you. And I'm going to tell you that when a society breaks down along those lines, and you start having a situation where the legal system only works for those in power, but it don't work for the people underneath it, then you do have a banana republic. And yes. I think until somebody goes to jail for this, and I don't care, I'm so sick of hearing, well, people are going to get fired. I heard Sessions today say, well, we're going to fire the people that have acted inappropriately. Jeff, I don't care about them getting fired. I want to see them in jail. I want to see justice done to these people that have mishandled. And look, I think what Comey did, think about this. When you're under investigation in any kind of FBI crime, I've always been told and understood that they put you under oath. You don't talk to the FBI unless they first put you under oath. They never put Hillary Clinton, Chris, under oath at any point during that moment in those interrogations, and yet they let Mills and Abedin sit in there with her attorney, and legal counsel. None of us would get that privilege. And then they walk out and say she's clean. And then we wonder why today people are not really that thrilled with what the IG report said, and Comey's not having political bias. I think he had a lot of political bias myself, but I'm like you, it don't really matter whether he did or not. I just want the law upheld. I could care less if he loved Hillary or didn't. That lady justice is blind, and that's why she's blind, because it's the same for Hillary Clinton as this for Chris Hull and Chris McDonald.
It's supposed to be. It's supposed to be, and it hasn't been, and it should be. And, I'm not a federal prosecutor. I'm not even an attorney. So I don't know who's guilty of what. But I do know that it is Hillary Clinton, $100 million, give or take, from Russia-connected interests to approve the transfer of 20% on an ongoing basis of the United States uranium stock, which makes nuclear weapons. Right? Yes. That's the core of nuclear weapons, which were aimed at us. That's an act of treason.
Yes, it is.
It's an act of enormous corruption, but it's also an act of administration created the Skolkovo project in Russia, which two military reports determined was a high-tech collection effort by the Russian government. We were transferring military technologies to them, and Bill Clinton, ends up taking money from these individuals. So at the same time that people are complaining about collusion with Russia, because Don Jr. took a meeting with somebody who had a tangential connection to the Pentagon, the Clintons were facilitating the military of a hostile power in the United States and making hundreds of millions of dollars. So, look, somebody should pay the piper here, in my judgment.
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. I totally agree with you. Those texts that Stork and Page exchanged, one of the statements that he made, she was sort of having a little fit, and she said, I just, what are we going to do to stop Trump? Basically, I'm sort of paraphrasing this. And then Stork comes back and says, we will stop him. In other words, don't worry, we are going to stop Trump. And then that sort of plays into the other text where they, said, we're going to get Andy on this. And we know Andy's aware of this, and we need to make sure that he's aware of these changes. When you read stuff like that as a security person, and again, that goes back to the credibility of our agencies, Chris, when you lose faith in the FBI being a fair broker in these investigations, it's sort of hard when they bring charges of any kind against any other citizen. I mean, you just wonder, is it tanked? Is this sort of a tainted investigation? Are they in the tank for this person or not? Because we lose faith in that. We have no faith in anything, man, because you got to have faith in the law. You got to have faith in the justice system in this country.
You do. This is one of the wonders of not only America but Western civilization is the rule of law. This is, we need the rule of law, not men. And this is a case where men and women were allowed to flout the law, and where men and women who were supposed to be our law enforcement agents allowed it. And it's got to stop. It's got to stop. And I agree with you that, first of all, I can't believe that they haven't been fired so far.
Right.
It's astonishing that, you know what they did with Peter Strzok? Do you know what he's doing right now? What office he's sitting in? So they
personnel department.
Yes, they transferred him. Right. They found these text messages that he's sending to his lover, which, by the way, is a firing offense. Right. He had an affair with an individual he was working with at the FBI. That is a firing offense. And these texts that he exchanged with her included not just lovey-dovey stuff, it included a criminal conspiracy to exonerate Hillary Clinton and to frame Donald Trump, presidential candidates in the United States. And they demoted him by taking him off of the patently illegal investigation being conducted by Robert Mueller, which was set up in advance by Jim Comey. They sent him to the HR department.
I know.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, HR department? I mean, you want this guy hiring more people? That's what he's doing. He's hiring people. He's deciding who gets fired. That's not okay.
I know.
He should have been fired. And the question should be, is he going to get indicted or not? And the answer should be, in my layman's opinion, yes.
Yes, he should be, Chris, and that's the bottom line there. You mentioned something a while ago, and I want to just let our audience realize tonight this is not the last report that's coming out, because the IG is also looking into the Uranium One deal with the Clinton Foundation. They are. That's coming out later. I think that there's probably going to be some other investigations into the Russia Spygate thing and whether these people, and you mentioned the security apparatus. See, the intel agency's angle is going to be more riveting, I think, than this. I think this is just small potato stuff, honestly. And the bigger scope of things, when you're talking about an email server, look, I have no love lost for Hillary Clinton. I could care less. But I will tell you, a lot of people I've talked to today believe that the apparatus in Washington could care less about her too. The only reason they are protecting her is that they know that if she goes down, there's going to be scorched earth in Washington, D.C., because these Clintons, they know so many secrets. They know the dirt on just about every single body involved in this bigger umbrella and canopy of corruption, that if they don't protect her, then bigger and worse fish are going to go down, possibly even the former president of the United States. And I'm not so sure that still ain't going to happen. But from your security angle, because you're looking at this from a security angle, not so much a law enforcement angle, where do you see this going from here? And do you think that IG report on the Uranium One is going to be the more of the death knell than this was today?
Well, I don't know. So let's just assume that the IG is playing fair, and it appears to me that more or less he is. I think that the email was always the tip of the iceberg.
Right.
The email, right? The email. The reason why we had an email scandal is because Hillary Clinton wanted to hide her emails. Right. That's what it was. Why did she want to hide her emails? Well, that's the real question. I mean, it appears as though from the emails that we've seen that the reason is because she, using the mechanism of the Clinton Foundation, she was selling policy to the highest bidder systematically as Secretary of State and made spectacularly large amounts of money doing it. And that's illegal, right? That's illegal. And it was specifically, it was a whole array of things which had to do with national security. She was helping compromise national security if these things are true. So that, again, that's treason, right? That's not, oh gosh. First of all, there are people in prison right now who did what she did with respect to the emails. Right. This is a consistent pattern that if you do what she did, you go to prison. But she did far worse things than the people who were in prison for accidentally putting a classified file into a file folder and carrying it into the wrong place, right? There are people serving prison time for this. They just indicted a guy. They just indicted a guy in the Midwest who was an FBI agent who took some screenshots of something and sent them to The Intercept, sent them to the press. They indicted him, recently, and they didn't indict the people who were systematically taking screenshots of things and sending them to the press on this very matter. So, okay, but let's put all that aside. He wasn't trying to endanger national security. He was worried about, in his mind, discrimination, racial discrimination. And I frankly, I disagree with his motivations. Having seen Minneapolis, I think, who are Sharia supremacists in Minneapolis, pretty carefully when it comes to terrorism. I mean, that would be pretty stupid if we weren't, frankly, given how many people from the Somali community there have gone to fight for ISIS, for God's sake.
Right.
But all that aside, she was selling things directly to our enemies. That's not what this guy who was just indicted, the FBI, that's not what he was doing. He was sending it to the press. She was actually making policy decisions that were benefiting America's enemies and might kill people someday, right? They might kill people someday. That's the thing. Some of these technologies, high speed, for example, so it is, I'm blanking on the technical term for it, but high speed technologies allow for nuclear weapons or other inbound missiles to escape current abilities to track them down and shoot them down. Those technologies were transferred under basically by Bill, and those things are now being deployed. Yes. And so, right, and they may be our undoing in a war someday. We could lose, untold numbers of lives, yours, mine, my child's, my wife's, your family's, the viewers, you may die because of this. Let's be clear. You may die because of what the Clintons did, both during the Clinton administration and what Hillary Clinton has done.
That's right.
So they put our lives at risk for money, and they should pay a price.
Right. Chris, I know you got to run. We got about 2 minutes, and I just want to wrap this up from a personal perspective. Totally opinion question. Where, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being most certain, 1 being absolutely not, where do you think that the main players in this are going to walk free, or do you think we're going to see jail for most of these people?
Oh, I'd say it's a 4. it's a 3 or a 4. Still, we have to understand that the law enforcement community is still under the operating control of the Obama administration. It just is. They've fired or demoted 10 to 12 people at the FBI. We're talking about hundreds of people. I understand from my sources that there are individuals inside the FBI, people of goodwill who are not partisan one way or the other, who say that they cannot come forward because they will be systematically destroyed. There are individuals of whom I am aware who have been warned by acting FBI agents that because of their work to expose what the FBI is doing, that they may be personally targeted and destroyed financially. These guys they're out of control. And
Yes.
so right? So the idea that we're going to be able to just, oh, look, we found the facts, so now there will be indictments. No, no, we're going to have to clean house. I believe that it is for us to question the viability of the Federal Bureau of Investigation as an entity. I do not believe that it, as an operating entity, it deserves to continue. I think that they should dismantle it and reassemble the good people, a tenth the size, I don't know what the number is, over at a renewed U.S. Marshals Service. I'm not the expert on that, but that's what I hear from my friends at Judicial Watch, who are the experts at this, right?
Gotcha.
And that's the scale that we would have to do in order to see real justice be done potentially. So I think it's 3 or 4, unfortunately, but it's, you know what? Yesterday it was 2 or 3.
Yeah, I understand, and I'm with you on that.
Moving up.
I feel you. I do. I think that you're probably got your finger on that more than most people do, and I'm with you on the 3 to 4. That's about my feeling of certainty that something's actually going to be done, and that's sad. And listen, buddy, I know you got to run. We're going to have you back next week when we talk longer, because I'm sure this is going to be a developing story. I wanted to bring you on tonight to get your initial thoughts, because it's a really well, even with every hour that's changing, there's Fox News alerts coming in, everything's sort of trickling out now, and I'm sure by next week we're going to have a bigger picture of what is actually in this report and the fallout from it. And I'm sure some people will have some consequences put on them by then the next time we talk. But we appreciate you coming on tonight. We really do, Ben. I really appreciate you, Chris. We've been talking with Christopher Hall. He's the Executive Vice President for the Center for Security Policy in Washington, D.C. Chris, thank you again, my friend.